Van, her friend Clara, and all the other students are chit-chatting as well as waiting for their professor to arrive in the class. After a while, the murmuring sound of the students slowed down as their professor entered inside the class. Everyone greeted him along with Van. Taehyung eyed whole class, then his gaze fell on Van. Both of their eyes locked for a moment, then he shifted his gaze to other students after making her cheeks flutter. Good morning everyone, let's start our lecture. Van plopped her hand on the seat and rested her chin on her hands, staring at Taehyung, who is one and only cool professor in the whole university and also her husband. It was an arranged marriage set by their parents. Her gaze fixed on Taehyung, who is not even bothered to look around his surroundings, writing on the board explaining the topic, while students were taking notes of it. She didn't bother to take notes because everything was going over her head. She didn't know why. She was not paying attention in the class and also on studies, even though she had dreams which she wanted to achieve. Nowadays, she doesn't feel like studying at all. She feels like to leave studies behind and get engaged in her married life. Vine is getting bored as hell. Suddenly, an idea came up in her mind. Clara, do you have some cookies? She whispered slowly. Vine, what are you even saying? Just concentrate on lecture. She whispered back. Just give me already. I don't want to study, she said in low voice. Clara sighed and picked out cookies from her bag and handed it to Vine to get rid of her, as if she will not give them to her, then she will keep disturbing her. Thank you, my girl, she whispered while smiling. On the other hand, Theong sensed some noises from back, so he turned back and looked around. His gaze fell on Van, who was going to have a bite of cookie. He frowned his eyebrows, being angry and irritated. He doesn't like if someone disturbs his class. He didn't even start studying and she is hungry. Why she always have to be distracted in the class? Van looked around to confirm if someone had catched her while eating in the middle of the lecture. Luckily everyone was writing notes. She sighed with relief, then took another bite and looked at the board side to confirm that she is not getting caught by Theong, but her eyes widened with shock as he was already looking at her fiercely. She immediately stopped chewing. Theong banged on the table, getting everyone's attention. Miss Van, mind explaining what you were doing just now instead of concentrating on the lecture? He asked with a straight face. Van stood up immediately on her place, lowering her head. She was embarrassed right now for getting caught by Professor while eating in the class. She felt a growing unease as she stood in the crowded lecture hall, her heart pounding louder with each passing moment. Her husband Theong, a respected professor at the university, stood at the podium, his stern gaze fixed on her. I'm sorry, Professor Kim, she said in low voice, lowering her head. Sorry is not going to work, Miss Van. Were you even concentrating on the class? Tell me what I was explaining just now. Van was more embarrassed now, not knowing what was he teaching cause yes, she didn't concentrate it enough. Still she managed to explain something but her cheeks turned crimson as embarrassment washed over her when she stammered out an answer, which was not entirely correct. Theon corrected her with a slightly disappointed expression, making her feel smaller with each passing moment. So you were not concentrating on the class from starting, Miss Van? He asked coldly. Van looked down, making him pissed off with her behavior. Miss Van, I am talking to you, he said in loud voice that made everyone in the classroom straightened in their seats and made Van flinch hardly. Tears brimmed up in her eyes, threatening to fall, yet she didn't dare to look up at him, making him more pissed than he already was. One, I must say your performance in this class has been falling down recently, and I have noticed you not concentrating in the class. Do you even know that your performance is even less than Eva, who is the weakest girl of the class? Do you remember that you used to be the topper of the class? Now see yourself where you are standing. Taehyung paused, allowing his words to sink in. Van squirmed in her chair, feeling the weight of her husband's disappointment. She knew she had been lacking, but hearing it publicly was a different kind of humiliation. Her classmates exchanged curious glances, and she could feel their judgmental eyes on her. I expect excellence from my students, Taehyung continued, his tone unwavering. And when I compare your work to that of your classmates, it's clear that you are falling behind. Van's cheeks burned with embarrassment as she desperately wished for the floor to swallow her up. The comparison to her classmates was like a dagger to her pride, and she couldn't help but feel like a failure. Van took a deep breath before speaking, her voice quivered. I know I have not been concentrating in your class, Professor Kim, and I am sorry for creating disturbance in your class and for letting you down. I'll make sure to work hard and catch up. She choked out through tears, looking at him. He looked back at her, his expression still stern, but there was a hint of concern in his eyes. He sighed, his features softening. Of course, Van, I want the best for my students, and that includes you. And I know you can do it, Van. I believe in you. Now sit down at your place and try to concentrate on the lecture, he said gently and softly. Van nodded as she sat down, tears welling up in her eyes. Clara puts her hand on Van's, trying to comfort her. The lecture continued, but Van couldn't concentrate anymore. She felt humiliated, as if her husband had publicly scolded her, even though nobody knew that they are married. On entering inside her house after a long day, the first thing that Van did was crying her heart out under the shower. She cried for what felt like an hour, then changed into her clothes and lay down on the bed, looking at the ceiling while thinking about whatever happened at the university today. The way Taehyung scolded her and compared her to everyone in the class broke her heart. She felt a sting pain in her chest, remembering his words. She couldn't hold herself and burst out crying again. Wiping her tears, she sighed with heavy heart. I know I was wrong, but did it give him right to humiliate me like this in front of the entire class? Doesn't this prove that he doesn't care about me even a bit? I'm his wife. He should have thought for a moment before humiliating me like this. If he doesn't care about me, about our relationship, then I also don't care from now onwards. I was fooled to even think of getting engaged in married life with such a husband who doesn't even care about his wife. From now onwards, I'll just focus on my studies and nothing else. She said to herself, then closed her eyes in order to sleep. But she couldn't sleep because of headache. After a while, she drifted into sleep. Theon entered inside the house. The first thing that came up in his mind was to check upon Ban, as he was regretting whatever he did to her today. His face got filled with remorse and guilt as soon as his gaze fell on Ban. Her face was pale, dry tears on her cheeks were still visible. He sits near her on the bed and took her hands in his and looked towards her with sincerity. Seems like you have cried too much. I know today I failed to be a good husband, and I'm sorry for that. But I was helpless. Like, what should I have done? I was tensed as you were not paying attention to your studies. So I had to do that. I know my way was wrong. I shouldn't have compared you to anyone else. I'm sorry, my love. I just want you to be your best. He said, then gently kissed her forehead, then went away from there. Cheung found himself in an unfamiliar emotional state. He couldn't quite understand why he felt bad about how things had unfolded with Van. It had been 2 days since the incident, and she was not even sparing a glance at him, neither at home nor in the college. She just usually left for college early in the morning and silently focuses on the lecture, takes notes of it without looking at him. Then at home she does have her dinner before Taehyung arrives, and when he goes to her room to ask to have dinner with him, he finds her busy in studies, so he doesn't disturb her. What should I do after this step? Why this question is so complicated? Should I take help from him? No, I'm not gonna ask him. He will taunt me that, Van, you should know this simple question. It's a basic concept. It's disappointing that you are struggling with it when other students grasp it effortlessly. No, I'm not gonna take help from him. Instead of helping me out, he will just taunt me for not getting simple questions. She said to herself in mind. Currently, Van is studying, trying to solve some questions, but she got stuck on a question, so she was finding ways to solve it. Whew, why did I even thought to take help from him? He just knows to scold. He didn't even apologize for that day. He's not guilty for his actions at all. I think I should ask this question from Jungkook tomorrow. At college. Yes, this is a good idea. Phew, now I should take some rest. After all, I am studying from so much time. She said to herself in mind while closing her books. Then she stood up and turned around, but got halted at her place on seeing Taehyung standing there. His black suit looked perfect on him, and a few strands of his dark hair fell on his forehead. His eyes landed on Van and instantly darkened to a deeper shade of black, and he approached her slowly, his gaze softening when his eyes met hers. Damn those glasses! I felt mesmerized by his dark, mysterious eyes. Unconsciously, I bit my corner of my lip. He longingly gazed at my lip, and I looked up at him, every cell in my body warning me to look away. But somehow I was unable to. I have actually come to think of it. He is the first sexy man I have ever seen. What would it be like if I could maybe touch his smooth hairs? Wait, no. I shook my head and snapped myself out of it. What are you even doing, Van? You're literally drooling over him, to whom you're not even supposed to talk, because he has hurted you badly and not even apologized yet. She said to herself in mind. Then she approached him slowly and cleared her throat. What are you doing here, Mr. Kim? She asked, her stern gaze fixed on him, like who would say that 1 minute ago she was drooling over him. Van, he called her hesitatingly. My name rolled off his tongue smoothly, which made my throat dry up, and my cheeks burst into flames. God, why I love it when he say my name. He wants to say something, but he is hesitating. Is he probably here to apologize for that day? She said to herself in mind. When mom called us for dinner, so please get ready, we will leave in an hour. He said softly while looking in her eyes. Ah, what was I even thinking? Why would he apologize to me? After all, he thinks that I was at mistake and I deserve those scoldings, she mumbled in mind. Okay, I'll be ready at time, she assured him, nodding her head. Theong nodded, took last glance of her nervously, then made his way towards living room. He sighed heavily after coming out from her room, as if he was stopping his breath all the time. Why she had to tease me like that? God, I swear when she bit her lip, I was just a second away from sealing her lips with mine. Only I know how I have controlled myself from doing that. Now what? What? Sleep? It's all your fault. I told you to say no to her proposal. Theong, Mom was asking us with so much hope to stay here for tonight, so I couldn't refuse her. I know it's all right, leave it. It's for tonight only, and I think we can manage, he said softly. Manage what? Sleeping on the same bed as you? She asked, annoyingly raising her brows. I will sleep on the floor if you are uncomfortable sharing bed with me, he said in a low voice without looking at her, then took the pillow from the bed and mattress from the cupboard and started preparing his wedding on the floor. Van was watching his every action silently with concerned gaze. Then she lay down on the bed hesitantly and pulled the duvet over herself. She looked down with the corner of her eyes to check he was comfortable. Am I being too selfish? Suddenly, why am feeling bad for him? It would have been better if there was a couch here. He could have slept on that instead of floor. She mumbled to herself in mind. Vine is trying to sleep, but she couldn't, and Theong is continuously looking at the ceiling, probably thinking deeply about something. Vine, he softly called her, without looking at her. Vine opened her eyes as soon as she heard his voice. His voice seemed like it was holding thousands of emotions. She cleared her throat before saying, "Hmm," she said while looking at the ceiling. "When your performance is improving, you are doing quite good in studies. Keep it up," he said softly. "How would you even know if I am doing good in studies? You don't even ask me how is my studies going," she said with a hint of sarcasm. I the question which you were solving earlier is quite typical. I saw you solve it till some steps, which means you are improving. So you were checking up on me if I am studying or wasting time? No one, I swear, I just came there to tell you about dinner thing. My gaze just accidentally fell on that question. I didn't had any intention to. Thank you for saying that, she said softly, cutting him off. Saying what? He asked, finally looking at her. I was going to ask that question from you, but I stopped myself thinking you'll scold me for asking such simple questions. Van, I would never. First of all, it was not a simple question. Second of all, if you'll even ask me what is 2 cross 2, I'll gladly tell you that Van, it's 4. I mean, I would never scold you for asking me doubts. In fact, why would I even dare to scold you again when I'm already regretting for doing that once? He said while looking at her. Here I was misunderstanding him unnecessarily. Wait a minute. He said he regrets scolding me? Is he talking about that day? She said to herself in mind. When you were literally lagging behind in your studies, I was tense for you, and that day when I caught you eating in the class, my doubt got clear that you don't pay attention in the class. So at that moment, I thought of scolding you so that you can get your attention back on studies. But I regret doing that. I'm regretting so badly. Because now you don't even spare a glance at me. I know I did wrong for eating in the class and I deserved your scolding for that. But the way you compared me to other students was something that really broke me. For a moment, I thought that I was failure. She sat with cracked voice. Theong's expression softened. He moved closer and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a tight hug. A pang of guilt settled in his chest as he realized how deeply he had hurt the person he loved most. She mustered the courage to confront him. The tears brimming in her eyes betrayed the anger she felt. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that in front of everyone by comparing me to other students," she said quietly but firmly. Theong's expression softened as he realized the impact of his words on her. "I'm sorry, love. I shouldn't have compared you to anyone else. I just wanted you to be your best." Vine tried to maintain her composure but couldn't help letting out a sob. "I know you want me to succeed, but I need your support and encouragement, not humiliation," she choked out through tears. He hugged her more tightly and comforted her by caressing her hairs and back. "I'm sorry, Van. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to tell you that you were lacking in your studies. I didn't mean to compare you to anybody." Van wiped away a tear and nodded. I just wish you had handled it differently. Taehyung took Van's hand and looked into her eyes with sincerity. Van, I promise never to compare you to anyone else again. You are one of a kind and I am always here for you, both as your husband and as your professor. And I promise I'll always support you and encourage you, Van. Taehyung broke the hug and wiped her tears with his thumb. Just believe me for once, Van. I really will never do anything like that to you ever again. We'll see. Did you forgive me? He asked hopefully. I'll think about it, she said, looking at other side. Taehyung brought his hand back through which he was cupping her cheeks. Oh, okay, then take rest. We have to wake up early tomorrow, he said while pulling the duvet over her. Good night, he said while kissing her forehead. Then he too lay down on his bedding. Van sensed the sadness in Taehyung's voice when he asked her to take rest. Moreover, she was not feeling good about him sleeping on the floor. She didn't forgive me. Does that mean she will keep ignoring me like earlier? He mumbled to himself in mind. Suddenly he felt someone climbed into his bed and trying to snuggle in his arms. Oh my god, Van, you scared me to death. What are you even doing here on the floor? I want to sleep with you, she said softly, smiling. Okay, come. He smiled softly and wrapped his arms around her safely. Then they both drifted to their dreamland. Over the following weeks, Van dedicated herself to her studies, spending countless hours in the library and seeking extra help from her husband. Taehyung in return offered unwavering support and guidance, staying up late to explain complex concepts and providing encouragement when she fell down. Van was so glad and thankful to have such a supportive husband, and she regrets misunderstanding him. He never let her do any work. He himself manages everything. Their bond grew stronger as he continued to support and encourage her in her studies. As the semester progressed, Van's performance improved steadily. It was her result announcing day and she was hella nervous. Taehyung stood at the podium, his gaze met Van's as she forgot how to breathe for a moment. As you all know, we are gathered here for announcement of your results for semester exams, he said, eyeing the whole class. Van's breathing increased its pace. Your results are unexpected as some of you have pleased me, he said, looking at Van. So students, this semester's topper is Miss Van. Everyone give her a big round of applause, he said, smiling proudly. Van's eyes widened with shock and surprise. It was so unexpected for her. She stood up on her place and looked at Taehyung with a look of, did I really made it? Taehyung nodded while smiling proudly, as if he understood what she was saying. Yes, Van, you have really made it, Wave, he said to himself in mind. Miss Van, please come on stage, he said while looking at her. Van made her way towards the stage. Miss Van has proved that she is the brightest student of our college. I especially want to apologize to Miss Van for looking down on her. A teacher's duty is to encourage her students, not to compare them, and I am extremely sorry for doing that to Miss Van, he said sincerely while looking at her. Van's eyes widened with surprise when she realized that Taehyung had just apologized to her in front of everyone. It was so unexpected of him. And at last, my heartiest congratulations to you, Miss Van. Tears of gratitude filled Van's eyes. Thank you, Professor Kim, for believing in me and for helping me become a better student. It was my pleasure, Miss Van. Remember, I'll always be here to support you, and we all are so proud of you. Van received better grades on her assignments and exams, and once the judgmental eyes of her classmates turned into admiration for her determination. Van is currently waiting for the bus at the bus stop. Suddenly, a car stopped in front of her. Her eyes widened when she saw Taehyung coming out from the car holding flowers. She stood up on her place. Is he here for me? She asked herself in mind. Taehyung approached Van with a wide smile on his face, then gave her the flowers. Van took them pleasingly. Why didn't you wait it for me? We could have gone home together. You didn't told me to wait. Ah, my bad. What are these flowers for? These flowers are your gift, Van, for achieving highest grades, he said, smiling proudly. I did so much hard work to achieve that, and I'm getting only flowers as a gift. Then what else do you want, butterfly? Tell me, I'll bring you anything. Butterfly? Oh my god, I can't believe he's calling me with nicknames. How about you give me a kiss as a gift? What, Van? Van walked towards him. He walked backwards out of nervousness. Will it be okay, Mr. Kim? She asked teasingly. Mrs. Kim, Van, you're really shameless. After all, you know I like you, so what's the use of shame? Van, I know that, but I'm not sure if you have forgiven me yet. He asked nervously in low voice. You supported me, encouraged me as per your promise, and moreover, you apologized to me publicly in front of everyone. So I am willing to forgive you. Thank you so much, Van. Now give me my gift. Aren't you too eager, Van? He asked, raising his brows. Yes, of course I am. I want to feel your lips on mine. God, this girl is too bold. Saying this, he immediately captured her soft lips with his, and she immediately responded back. Their faces moving in synchronization, he tightly held onto her smooth waist as she let her hands move from his chest to the nape of his neck, softly tugging on his hairs. The feeling was indescribable. Her soft lips seemed like an addiction, and he never wanted to stop. They broke apart after what felt like an hour, and he felt proud looking at her plump, swollen lips and a glint of desire in her big brown eyes. Did you like it? He asked, cupping her cheeks. Damn much. Then should we continue this after reaching home? I smirked, tugging at his lips. Van nodded her head cutely like a kid. Theong's eyes widened with a smile. Whoa, Van, you're too naughty, he said while pinching her chubby cheeks. I love you, my girl, and I will always love you. Today, tomorrow, forever, he said while connecting their foreheads. I can't believe you are saying it to me. Why, Van? Because you never said it before. Van, I may not said that I love you, but I expressed it and showed it to you by my actions. I know. I realized that by your care, support, and encouragement. Van, you could be my entire world, he whispers in her ear. Only if you let me, he finished while moving to her collarbone. I think I will, she said, stroking his hairs. A warm smile tugged at Theong's lips. He kissed her neck, then again cupped her face. Then should we go home now? And after all, we have to finish what we have started. Van understood what he is trying to say. She hits his chest playfully. Now who is being naughty? Don't forget I have learned that from you, he said while pulling her close into his embrace.